Good day, everyone. I hope everyone is having an amazing day today. So today I will be covering the second aspect of the Salesforce tutorial series. So if you have attended my first session, so you would remember that I have covered how to set up an org, showed you bits and pieces around the difference between the Lightning and Classic. I showed you the Kanban view around opportunities, talked about a bit of accounts and contacts, and also showed you about around Salesforce certification pathways. So today I'll be talking about company information and user creation. So I'll try to keep the video short so that I don't want it to bore you guys. Okay, so once you're in the Salesforce, right? So I hope everyone knows how to log into Salesforce, right? So login.salesforce.com and use your username and password to log in. So once you're in, so you will see something similar like you are seeing on my screen. So the first thing I want to talk about is the company information, right? So let's go to company. So this is how you type or look for a company information. If you're not sure where to find and set up, just type it here. You will it will take you to the company information. So select the company information. So the company organization name is the name of the company you have given when you register for an org, right? And the few things I would like to cover here, just to make sure you understand a few important things. The first thing to look for is the use data space and the use file space. See, we are using a developer org, means a free org. So Salesforce makes sure that you do not use the developer org for a full-time business, because then you need to look for different licenses, enterprise, ultimate. There are a lot of license options there. I'll put the link below for your information. And so yeah, please have a look at the data space, and please pay constant attention to it whenever you get time, because the more stuff you add while you practice, the data space get used. So yeah, that's one thing you need to check it out. The default language and default locale, right? This is specific to the company or to your org. So I've selected a default language as English. If you are from another country, like for instance, if you're from Spain, you can put Spanish, or if you're from Portugal, you can put Portuguese. So, or if you're from Germany, you can put German there. So it depends if your company operates in that specific region, right? So this is specific to a default setting for your organization. But when you create a user, you can actually override their default locale and default language, because you might have a company, say for instance, located in Germany, and you might have users working in Japan or in China or wherever. So their language may be different, right? So a Japanese guy will prefer to use Salesforce in Japanese language. Just give you an example. There are certain languages which is supported. So I will show you what all the languages supported. So yeah, so to see that, go to edit, and if you scroll down here, you can see default language. So these are all the language that's supported. Yeah, Japanese is there, which is great. From Finland, if you're Finnish, you can Thai, Danish. All these different languages are supported. So yeah, you have quite a lot of flexibility with that. And another thing I wanted to talk about is about the fiscal year. So let me go back. So the fiscal year by default, you can see that it says it starts in January. So that's the way Salesforce defaults it to. You can change based on your company fiscal year. It could be February could be, depends upon your company, right? So you can change it if you want. So if you go to edit, you can change it. I can show you what I mean by that. So as you can see, there is no information about fiscal year, right? So you can't change the fiscal year information here. To change the fiscal year information, you have to go to fiscal year option here. So if you go here, so you have a standard fiscal year and custom fiscal year. You need to keep one thing in mind, into consideration, is that changing a fiscal year later during the course of Salesforce usage can affect your forecast adjustment. So please keep that in mind. You can also go for custom fiscal year, but there are few things you have to keep into consideration. The first thing you have to remember that if you enable custom fiscal year, then you can't go back to standard fiscal year. It's very well mentioned here. So Salesforce makes sure that you understand the implication of doing certain things. So it's always good to pay attention to all this information out there, right? So yeah, so you can do this stuff here, but you have to keep your the business requirement into consideration, right? Okay. And another thing I want to talk about is the business hours. So as you can see, the default business hours is 24 hours. So the business hour, right? The business hour here comes into picture when you are dealing with support requests. Let's say you are running a consultancy firm, right? And you are giving say a customization service to a user or to another organization, and the user from that organization's have some issues around your customization, so they obviously have to reach out to you, right? And so you have your own support team handling those cases. So usually the business hours often cater around the case management, so you can change that. If you, currently it shows that you're open 24 hours. So if you want, you can change it to say I change it from 9 a.m. to so just an example, right? So 9 a.m. to 5. Let's say you're working on Sunday, right? You're working 7 days a week, right? For whatever reason. So let's say you wanted to change your business hour on Sunday from 9 to 5, and rest of the days is 24 hours. Somebody is on call 24 hours. You work in a shift. So yeah, you get the point, right? So save that. So you can see it changed, and you can also add holidays, like for instance Christmas or Easter or Passover or whatever, right? So you can add the holidays and it will adjust to that. So this is one of the things. So this is usually, this comes very handy for case management, as I mentioned, right? So yeah, just keep this in mind. Another very important thing to remember is about multi-currency. Your company might be dealing with single currency, let's say a euro, so you don't really have to worry about it. So if you're doing business only in Europe, so you're dealing with one currency, that's great, that's fantastic. You don't have to worry about it. But let's say you're dealing with international clients and you have branches across the world. Let's say you are a European company, but you have regional offices in United States, let's say India, let's say China. They have different currencies, right? So in that case, you have to probably it's a good idea to enable multi-currency settings, but you have to understand the implications of enabling multi-currency settings because you have to keep exchange rate into consideration. There are a lot of challenges that comes with multi-currency. So the way you do enable the multi-currency is, if you go to edit on a company information, there is an option called activate multi-currency. Please read the implication of enabling multi-currency. This is very, very, very important, because once you enable it, you can't go back. There is this feature can't be turned off, as it says. So please read the information. So if you click here, it will take you to enable multi-currency implication. Another thing I wanted to tell you that excuse me, help.salesforce.com is your best friend. You will find every information about the Salesforce here. It's amazing place to get information, read about it. If you like bedtime stories about Salesforce, then this is a place to go. I mean, I can't tell you how important this place is. This location, the help.salesforce.com is. You will get every information about the Salesforce here. It's an amazing place, guys. Please check it out when you get time. Right, so this is the company information, basic stuff about company information I wanted to cover. And next we go to user licenses, right? So obviously Salesforce relies on licensing. You can't use like 100,000 licenses without paying a fee, right? Every software has a license, right? Otherwise, what's the point of doing a business if you're giving everything for charity, right? So, right, okay. Sorry, I digress. Okay, so if you scroll down under company information, you can see different license information, right? So you have Salesforce, Salesforce platform, a lot of other licenses, gold, partner, customer, community. You don't have to know what each and every license means. There is a good documentation around this. If you see here, if you click here, it will take you to the documentation page. Yeah, just taking the time. Okay, so you go to standard user licenses. You can see a lot of information about licenses. You can read a lot of stuff from here, right? Okay, so I would like to tell you the basic difference between Salesforce and Salesforce platform, which is very commonly used. So Salesforce license will give you access to full CRM and App Exchange. And Salesforce platform will not give you access to full CRM. If you want only custom apps, then Salesforce platform is useful. So now you may ask, what do you mean by full CRM, right? So if you remember, in my first session, or my first lecture, I showed you about, talked about accounts, leads, opportunities, contacts, right? So opportunities, leads, they form an important part of CRM systems in Salesforce. So if you are a user with the Salesforce license, the first one, you will have access to accounts, contacts, leads, opportunities, reports, right? Dashboards. But if you are a user who been assigned a Salesforce platform license, right? So then you will have access to accounts, contacts, but no access to opportunities, leads, right? Because these are our CRM components of Salesforce. So that's the basic difference. And when you sign on to an org, right, and the user you create, so that user will automatically be assigned a Salesforce license and will be a sysadmin, so who will manage everything in your org. Just keep that in mind. You can read a lot about the licenses. It's very, handy information. You will get to know a lot of stuff from here, right? Okay, so similarly, you can read about permission set licenses as well. So you can go here to the help and read about this stuff. Okay, now another thing I wanted to talk about is the user management. So if you don't know where to find the user management, so just type user management settings. Okay, so these enhanced profile user interface, this is very handy option. Because you can turn off and turn on certain UI feature. I'll show you what I mean. So let's say I don't want this user profile interface, right? I turn it off. There's no save button here, so this option, if you disable it, it saves it. So now go to profile, and I will cover the profiles, roles, permission sets, and security. But today I'll be talking about the very basic company settings and how to create a user. So I wanted to keep this session shorter today. Okay, so sorry, I digressed. Okay, so we are in profiles, right? So let's go to S, and let's pick any profile. Let's say standard user. Now you see everything is a bit clunky, right? Page layout is like a blah blah, one full length of information. It looks a bit messy, unorganized, right? I mean, I'm not a fan of this interface. Some people are. I mean, I'm not going to judge anyone. It's their preference, right? So let me go back to user management settings, and I enable this one, and go back to sorry, sometimes it's quite slower, sorry about that. Profiles, and go to standard user again, and there you go. Everything is organized, and I pretty much like this user interface. But please remember that if you're a system admin, right, please do reach out to the user before changing any UI settings, because I mean, certain people like to do things in a certain way, and some people like to do things in a different way, right? So it's always good to reach out to people, get their opinion, before you decide to to change some user interface setting. Cool. Now, another thing I wanted to talk to you about, since we're talking about the user interface, right? I wanted to talk to you about the list views. So list views, if you remember that in the previous session, I talked about Kanban and the list views. Let's go to account again. So the way you go to account, you see this URL right at the very top. Just go to remove everything after Lightning, and it will take you to the main homepage. Yep. Right. Okay. So let's go to accounts. So if you remember, I mentioned to you that this is just an app, and with different tabs and screens, and each tabs are an object in Salesforce. So we are talking about standard object now: accounts, contact, dashboards, report. So let's go to accounts. And this is a recently view, right? This is, if you see, this looks like a list view, right? And I'll change it to, say, all accounts, right? So see, you can see that this looks like a list view, means everything in a tabular format, right? So let's say I don't want this list. I only want a list of accounts where type is, let's say, customer direct, right? So let me see if I have any other type. No, we don't have any such information here. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to create a list view with type equals to customer direct. Okay, so to do that, go to new, and I will just say customer direct. Okay, so API name, please remember that API name has to be unique. You can have a list name whatever you want, but the API name should be unique. Okay, share with a group of users. No, I just only want this list for myself. Okay, so now we have to so what happens is that I created a list, but it still shows every account. This is not what I wanted, right? I wanted to display only account with the type customer direct, right? So the way you do it, you see the filters here, right? Add filters, go to type. Let's see, it should be type somewhere. Hopefully it should be type. Oh yeah, there we go. Type equals to customer direct, right? Okay, done. Save. Voila, there you go. So this is very easy to customize, very handy, very easy to use. So I mean, you can customize your list based on your requirement. So now it's, I can see all accounts. Now I can see an account where type is customer direct, so you can see that. So, and another thing is you can also update an information using on a list. For instance, like if I wanted to change the type, I can go and change the type from customer direct to prospect, and I can save it. So I think I can do multiple selection. See, if I wanted to pick 3 accounts and change the type to say customer channel, I can do that by clicking this checkbox, and there you go. So now if you refresh the list, you will see my list will shrink. Yep, that's exactly what I meant. So the Salesforce has made the list views very user friendly. You can do a lot of things. You can add filters. You can customize the way you want according to your requirement, right? Okay, now let's go back to the setup again. So if you remember the way to go to setup, there's a gear icon here. Click here and go to setup. Now I wanted to do a user creation. So the way you do that, so you go to user, click on users, and there's an option called new user. So all the information which is mentioned, which is required information, this red color, these are mandatory fields. They should have put some of the sign, but yeah, whatever. So let's say I have to put test, email, whatever. So test@gmail.com. The username has to be unique across the. If it's not unique, then it will complain. So nickname, whatever you want. So I'm not creating a user, just going to show you how to do that. So the user license, right? So you can see that we can't select Salesforce license because it's already been used. So the only license we have is Salesforce platform, and the profile you can choose the standard platform user profile, and the role you can choose whatever role you want. Or if you want, you can choose no role. So remember one thing, that you can only choose one profile, and role you can or cannot choose. I mean, depends. I mean, if you don't want any role, you can assign it to none. But you can't choose more than one role for this person. So, and for profile, there's no option called none. So there's only one profile. So you have to assign a profile, and yeah. So, and you can change the local settings, as I mentioned to you. And if you wanted to change the language of this person, let's say this person is based in Japan, you can change it to Japanese. So a whole user interface will change it to Japanese for this person. I'll show you what I mean by that. Let's say I wanted to change it to Japanese and save it. Okay, see, duplicate username. So the username already exists in the org. So username already exists in this or another Salesforce org. So it has to be unique across the org. So let's say test one Thanos. Hopefully there's no another Thanos, but okay. Yeah, we could able to save it. Okay. Now, I wanted to demonstrate how to log into this specific user. And there is an option here. If you go to users here, right, you can see that we have this login option here, right? So what does that mean is that, if you are a system administrator and if you like to see, say, how Mark views his Salesforce screen when he logs in, then you can use this option, because it's not a good practice to say, hey, Mark, would you mind giving me your password? Obviously, Mark will say, no, I'm not going to give you my password. So Salesforce made it easier so that you can log in as Mark to troubleshoot. Sometimes Mark will complain to you, say, look, I can't see certain opportunities, or there's some other issues that's happening on my org. So that the best way to troubleshoot is to log in as a Mark without the password. So to enable this option, you have to go here to login, access policies, and this is option. Administrator can log in as any user. So let me disable this, and I'll show you what I mean. And if I go to users, and you see the login button is disabled. It's gone, right? So that's because we have disabled that login option. So let me enable that back. And yeah, if you enable that, you can see, and if you go back to users, voila, this option is back, right? And one more option I would like to show you. So let's go to sessions. Sorry guys if it's a bit overwhelming. I try to make it simpler. That's why I wanted to keep today's session shorter, because I can imagine it can get a bit overwhelming. Trust me, Salesforce is amazing. I mean, you can do a lot of things with Salesforce, and there are a lot of options as well at the same time. So force re-login after login as a user. This should, I untick this option. What does that mean is that if you log in as another user, right, from, let me see, let's say, I'll show you what I mean. If I click here, right, it will log me as test, right? And then if I log out from the test thanos@gmail.com, it will ask to re-log in again to enter this space. If I untick that option, then it will, when I log off from test, it will take me back to this page. I don't have to re-log in again. So it's up to the system administrator, or I prefer to untick that option because it's a nightmare to keep on logging again and again. So okay, so now let me show you what I meant earlier, that the test user will be seeing his org in Japanese, right? Because he's a user who's based in Japan. And so let me log in. There you go. See, everything is in Japan, and you see that. So you can translate it, but I don't want to translate it. So now the thing is, I don't understand Japanese, so I presume this is the way you log off, and yeah, it's gonna make it. I don't understand what it means, but yeah. So I presume that's logged off, the button. So it took me back here. Yeah. So yeah, you get the point what I mean. So Salesforce made it very easy for a different user to view their org in their own respective language. But there are limitations to the number of languages you can choose there, right? As I've already shown you before. So yeah, the user creation is one of the most important part, because obviously you need to be a user, right? So now you might wonder, why do we need different kind of users, right? So administrator, for multiple reasons, right? So you can create an integration user, which means that the user should be only responsible for integration, no other operation, probably. and you can create a user which have limited access to certain part of Salesforce, which is obviously controlled by profiles and permission sets. So I'll be covering that in my security session next time, because security is one of the core aspects of Salesforce, and it's very important. So let me recap what we covered today. So let's go to, so we talked about company information today, right? So we went to company information, and we talked about the default language and default locale of this company, and organization name, as I mentioned, often comes from the org you registered during the registration time by developer.salesforce.com. And another thing we talked about is the use data space, use file space. Just please be aware of the space usage, because this is a free org, right? And then we also talked about fiscal years, the way you can change it by going to the fiscal year here. And I mentioned about the custom and standard, so please keep in mind, if you tick enable custom, you can go back to standard, and please read about the help documentation around it. And the business hours, as I said, you can change it to whatever based on your support team working hours, and you can also add holidays here, right? And we talked about the MultiCurrency. So based on your company trading and regional offices, you can set the multi-currency options, but please be aware that multi-currency, great power comes with great responsibilities, right? So when you're using multi-currencies, you have to deal with exchange rates and backdated exchanges and all kind of stuff. So yeah, please read about the implication of turning it on. Once you turn the multi-currency on, you can't turn it back off, right? And then we talked about the user licenses. As I mentioned, that right now you have total 2 licenses of Salesforce, and use license is 2, and Salesforce platform is 3. Use license is 1, because we just now create a user using a Salesforce platform license, right? And there are different other licenses there, so you can read about it using the help license. Similarly for permission set license. And then we talked about user management, where we talked about enhanced profile user interface, because by turning it off and turning it on, you can have an impact on profile. So the way you check it, you go to profiles, you can pick up any profile, and you can see this look and feel will change based on that, the toggle button or toggle switch. And then we talked about creating the users. And so the way you can create a users, right? And you can create a user by creating new user. One last thing I wanted to demonstrate while we're here, adding multiple users, right? This is a very handy feature. So it actually works based on the number of licenses left. So for instance, right now you have only 2 Salesforce platform licenses, right? So if you select Salesforce platform, it will give you an option to create 2 users, because you can't create 3 users with 2 licenses. Every user needs a license. So, and you decide to pick Salesforce platform, and there's only 2 Salesforce platform licenses available. So let's say, I don't want to choose this one. This will be a mess if you don't want to create 5,000 chatter license. Let's say I want to pick up work.com, right? Just to demonstrate. You can see you will be able to create 3 users, right? So this is a very handy feature if you wanted to try it out, if you don't want to go to click new and to do a quick user creation, right? And then we talked about login option, where if an admin wants to log into a different user to troubleshoot, so this login option can be enabled by going to login access policies and enabling this option, right? And we also talked about session settings, where we talked about forced relogin after login as a user, which will stop the user to force relogin every time you switch back and forth between different users. So yeah, and then we, lastly but not the least, we talked about list views. So the way you go to list views is just taking everything after the lightning um, in the URL. Please take that off, and it will take you to your home page, which is a Sales Cloud. And then we talked about the list views, as I mentioned. So the way, and we created a new list view called Customer Direct. The way you do is by going to this icon here, the gear looking icon. We create a new, and we add different options, and then we create a filter, and yeah. And we also talked about updating multiple entries from a list view by selecting each, where we talked about changing the type. So we picked up the type and changed it, and then we used this update 3 selected items. Then we were able to apply. So yeah, this is a pretty basic stuff what I've covered. It's not very difficult. I mean, I hope that you find it somewhat valuable, because this is very important and topic, in my opinion, because you need to create a user, right? And you need to understand your license policies and kind of stuff. And you also need to understand about the fiscal year and the business hours and multiple currencies, whether those are required or not. These are the critical components of any business. So, and user creations, right? You might have 50 users in your org, so each one will have to access the org. So you need to create those users and assign them respective license. So yeah, so that's why this specific topic is very important. And so yeah, I hope you find it of some use today. If not, I really apologize for that. So next time we'll be covering about security. We'll talk about policies. We talk about roles. We talk about permission sets. We will explain about organization default and public access, private access. We're going to talk about all this kind of stuff. So the next section will be a bit longer because security is very crucial. And I would say that if you are not comfortable with security, then I'm afraid that you can mess up things in Salesforce, because you can expose the Salesforce to potential attack, and any user can go in and do things whatever they want. So yes,